My knees ached as I lowered myself down the worn stone steps. While not an unmanageable task, even at the seasoned age of 107, I dread the descent every morning. Not quite as much as I dread the inevitable return up the stairs at the end of the evening. Musings of having an elevator installed cross my mind daily. But I know that the risk of exposing my work isn't worth it. No sense in hiding these deadly oddities, just to have a day laborer unwittingly release a demon back into the world. When I finally reached the landing at the bottom of the stairs, I propped myself up against a wooden table and drew in ragged breaths. Limited immortality had sounded so much better than this when I had taken this position so very long ago. No one had bothered to tell me that my body would age and decline just the same. My tissue paper thin lungs had filled with air again, and my pulse was beginning to normalize as I turned my body around to face the squat wooden table on the landing. Directly in the center of the table sat a fist-sized oval made of solid gold and inlaid with delicate bone filigree. I had always assumed the ornamentation was made from human bone, but I would never know for sure. My predecessor hadn't known either, but such dark objects lead to reasonable assumptions. Shakily, I slid my right index finger into a hole in the golden oval until I felt a prick of pain as something sharp slipped into my leathery skin. The urge to withdraw my finger from the relic each day was still a struggle to suppress. Pulsing pain radiated into my wrist like arthritis, and I could feel the blood being drawn from my finger. When it stopped, I removed the digit and rubbed the end of it on my thumb.
I grow tired of the taste of your blood, immortali,
hissed the multi-layered voice from the oval.
You will bring me something younger soon, Felix.
High demands from a demon trapped in an egg, Zethra, I replied mockingly. I have a bit more work to do before you keep someone alive for a cursed century.
You live so long I accept your offering of blood,
Zethra said angrily.
You will not be immortali forever.
Quiet, egg dweller, I responded as I shuffled down the hallway towards the archives. With an attitude like that, I'm likely to give you a dip into the barrel. Silence. Even the likes of Zethra feared being placed in the barrel. Shuffling footsteps bounced off the rough granite walls of the hallway as I made my way toward the archive. The heavy door glowed lightly with runes that I had never been able to read. It didn't matter anyhow. My predecessor had shown me the order in which to touch them to open the door, so their meaning had little significance to me. My throbbing index finger traced the path between the correct runes, and I heard the latch click and the hinges gave a low groan and the door opened inward. For the last 85 years, I have been the senior archivist for the Historical Society of a tiny Midwestern town. We display unique tools, turn-of-the-century documents, and rusted pieces of Americana for bored school children to look at and forget during obligatory school field trips. Our genealogy office sees a bit more of an enthusiastic response from the older citizens here. My real work, however, is found 50 feet down the stone steps below the Historical Society and beyond the ruined oak door. There, I am. The Archivist. Fancy title, I know. The archive has been there long before this town ever existed. For all the wonders and terrors held within, my organization knows precious little of the origin of this place. For that matter, we often know little of the objects we collect other than the power that they possess and the possible implications to the world at large. The objects themselves come in at random intervals. A bedraggled man or woman appears at the Historical Society desk a few times a year and presents me with a brown paper wrapped box. They tell me it is a donation for the Historical Society, then place a copper coin with a crucifix and half-moon stamped on it down on my desk. We nod at one another, and they depart. These are the Venators, relic hunters. At this point, my work usually begins. I would leave my apprentice Thomas to watch the society as I trudged down those damnable steps with a new package. Zethra gets its daily drink, and I receive another day of life in return. This ritual I must perform daily, package or not. I will continue feeding that imp until Thomas is prepared to assume my duties as the archivist. Relics are stored into 2 categories upon arrival: archive and termination. Archive relics aren't necessarily banal objects, but they are safe enough to store without causing havoc by their sheer presence. An excellent example of this is found on aisle 3, shelf 4. Carved from Brazilian rosewood and adorned with silver bands, the pen of a Myuu is easily contained. Without a hand to wield it, the thing holds no power. In the hand of the unsuspecting, death is certain. If gripped in a bare hand, the pen will begin to draw blood from the user as ink. Enthralled by the pen, the wielder will be compelled to write every sin and wrongdoing they have committed over their lifetime. No poor deed is too small to be drawn forth on a crimson-laced page. Worse yet, there is no man or woman alive who would run out of evil deeds before they run out of the precious ink. The pen sits in a resin case as it has for many decades. No touch, no trouble. Termination relics are those that simply cannot be contained. Their existence is such that proximity alone can lead to calamity. An unfortunate example of this can be found on aisle 1, shelf 2. Roughly twice the size of a marble, the glass ball is filled with swirls of crimson and obsidian. Treeman's eye. What a terrible thing. While unassuming in appearance, too much time in its proximity proves maddening. Spending more than 2 to 3 weeks within a 100-foot radius of Treeman's eye will drive anyone to madness and eventually homicidal actions. Though the victim of the eye believes the thoughts to be their own, it is actually the malevolent whispers of the glass sphere. The voice of Treeman will fill your mind with irrational feelings and beliefs about your friends and loved ones, until you are driven to take their lives. With all my years of experience in handling cursed objects, Treeman's eye toys even with me. And my thoughts in the last few weeks have begun to dwell on believing my assistant Thomas had some dark purpose for the archive. If you're wondering why I've been so careless as to leave it here long enough for these thoughts to invade my mind, I assure you it was not done lightly. I've investigated methods to contain the dark whispers from the sphere to avoid its now obvious necessary destruction. Sadly, my efforts have been in vain. Treeman's eye will have to enter the barrel. The barrel is the last known Sangue de Cristo, Sanguis Christi for my Latin-speaking friends, or for the English inclined. It is simply the blood of Christ stored in a cask made of Jerusalem pine and banded in braided gold. It is the last of its kind. This is also why we must determine whether or not to destroy an artifact. You see, the barrel is finite, and the process of submerging and destroying these objects consumes the last bits of the precious liquid. So, I began my work. Fortunately for me, my walk was short to the doomed artifact. When I reached the shelf and looked at the swirling glass sphere, I could already hear the voice that sounds much like my own mind whispering. "And the boy will destroy everything you've worked so hard for, Immortali." Nonsense, demon. I am aware that you know what I am, Felix. Yet still, I tell you the boy will be your doom. This can be stopped if you spare me. Anything facing its own destruction will tell the same lies, Treeman. Ask the Jinn if you do not believe me. Thomas releases him when you are away. Beware, Felix. I'll take that under consideration, Treeman. Farewell. With this back and forth finished, I pulled the silver tongues from my pocket and used them to grasp the orb on the shelf. I shuffled my feet toward my workbench and placed the sphere on a purple velvet pillow and settled myself on a stool. My knuckles dropped as I lifted the heavy wooden lid from the barrel nested in the center of the workbench. A rich aroma of cardamom, myrrh, and copper filled the air as I gently placed the lid to the side. Taking the tongues, I lifted the sphere from the velvet pad and dropped it into the barrel. I heard the plunk of the sphere as it fell through the thick liquid and settled on the bottom of the cask. Low shrieks and the sound of bubbling filled the room, but I didn't bother to look inside the barrel. I had seen the process enough times that the novelty has worn away. I recovered the barrel and prepared to leave the archive for the day. Trayman was no more, and I had grown tired. My eyes drifted toward the brass gin lamp on aisle 1, shelf 4, as the demon's word filled my head. Ask the gin if you do not believe me. Perhaps I would tomorrow. Trayman's influence had left me, but still, I worried. Thomas would need to be prepared to take over my position soon. Sethra was right. I wouldn't be immortality forever. It was Tuesday, and Thomas was generally here in the early hours of the morning, warming the building and readying it for tours. I saw no sign of his car as I slowly made my way up the path toward the door. When I reached the front, I found the door unlocked, and I wearily stepped inside. "Thomas?" I yelled into the darkness. "Anyone? Hello?" No answer returned to me. I turned and locked the door behind me, and patted my jacket pocket to be sure I had something to defend myself with. My weapon was always there, but it comforted me to feel it below my hand. The main floor of the society building was empty. My knees already ached, and my chest rose and fell rapidly just from the energy expended in my initial search. Dread filled me for the walk down the stairs to the archive. The descent took much longer than usual. Bracing myself against the squat wooden table, and struggled to smooth out my breathing from pants to long even breaths. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I noticed was the absence of Sethra's egg. The table was empty. A table that had been in place for over 200 years now sat empty. My wavering heart thumped its own weak impression of panic as the finality of the situation dawned on me. Sethra was gone. For the first time in 85 years, the timer to my demise began to tick away in my mind. Pushing myself away from the table, I made my way down the hall, only to see the heavy oak door shredded to splinters and littering the floor. As I crossed through the destroyed barrier, two things immediately stole my attention. Every aisle of the archive was now barren. Not a single shelf held an item. Worse yet, I could see the Jerusalem pine barrel turned on its side, all of the crimson liquid spread across the floor, dried and flaking. The only item left of the centuries of collection sat on the edge of my workbench. The gin's lamp. Unable to act of his own agency, it had been stored as an archive relic. Now, it alone remained. Warm tears trailed down the deep lines of my face as I forced myself in motion towards the lamp. I rubbed the butt of my palm against the smooth sides and looked at the grey mist that poured from the spout. A translucent and emaciated figure appeared before me unsmeared. It wore only a loincloth and golden jewelry. Every bone and joint protruded cartoonishly beneath the tight skin of its body. The pupilless eyes flickered a dull white glow as the thing gazed in my direction.
Immortality,
the djinn said.
Why have you summoned me?
Where are the relics, Davin? I asked, anger boiling in my voice. Who has done this? Davin, the djinn, smiled at me, revealing a mouth full of gold-capped and jagged incisors.
Thomas,
he replied simply. I shook my head. No, I replied. Thomas wouldn't have done this. He knows the dangers that lurk here.
He has freed us all,
Davin replied without emotion.
He has taken these wonders and will free them back into the world to do their work. You are at an end, Felix. Thomas has seen to this.
Taking Sethra hasn't killed me, I said in return. It has simply put me on a timer. Return to your lamp, Davine.
No.
It replied with a smile. Davine raised a withered arm in my direction, and I began lifting off of the ground. At first, the pressure removed from my aching knees was almost welcome, until the pain began. It felt as though a monstrous snake has wrapped around my body to squeeze the life out of me.
He freed me too, you fool,
spat the djinn.
You have no powers here anymore. The price for my freedom was to remain here and end the great immortality.
I could feel the air being pressed from my lungs. Small sensations like the crackling of dried twigs spread first across my ribcage, and then across my entire body. Consciousness was slipping away, and my vision was beginning to cloud. Then, I realized that the djinn's lamp was still hooked to my left index finger. With the last of my strength, I drew the lamp to my chest and shoved my right hand into the pocket of my jacket. Gripping the vial within, I pulled it out and held the vial to my mouth. Biting the cork with my teeth, I pulled it from the vial and drops of blood from inside splashed out on my face. Not too much of it, I hope. I poured the final precious vial of Sangre de Cristo out of the crystal tube onto the lamp wrapped around my finger. The metal began to sizzle and melt away in a puddle on the floor below me. Air rushed back into my lungs as the snake-like grip around my body loosened and vanished, before dropping me to the ground. As I lie on the ground in a helpless pile, I looked toward Davine. His expression was vacant, and his eyes locked in on the area where he had held me in the air only moments ago. Slowly, his body began to wobble in a circle, and his jaw fell back. A cascade of yellow and purple light burst out of his mouth and dissipated into the room. And with that, Davine dissolved into nothingness. I'm not sure what I will do from here, but I'll figure something out. It's not as though I really have any damn choice in the matter. My bastard apprentice has stolen thousands of cursed objects. If that wayward djinn is to be believed, then these items will be sent back out into the world that I have tried so desperately to keep safe. Beware strange items. If you receive something valuable that you weren't expecting from a stranger, do not accept it. I don't know where or how these relics will make their way out, but I'm afraid that this mad scheme will be seen through to the end. Should you happen upon one of these demonic vessels, I simply ask you to do the following. Take them to your local historical society. Tell them it is a donation, but that you lack the coin. Hell, tell them Felix sent you. They'll know what to do. As for me, I'm immortality no more. Sathra got its wish. This warning may be my final act in attempting to help this world. If any Venators are listening to this, then I beg you to complete your work. It has never been more important. We are losing this battle, but the world will pay the price.